Ever wonder how cartoon characters are created? Sometimes they pop off the page or drawing board fully blown, but more often, there's a long, drawn-out development process. Hi, I'm Earl Kress, writer and animation historian, here to tell you a story about a family called the Gruesomes, and how they came to appear in 2 of our Season 5 Flintstones episodes. Let's go back to a story meeting between co-founder Joe Barbera and one of his main writers, Michael Maltese. Now, Mike had been a writer for Warner Brothers during their heyday and had a long and successful career teamed up with Chuck Jones. At Hanna-Barbera, he was even more prolific, single-handedly writing the entire Quick Draw McGraw series, which included the cartoon Snooper and Blabber. Well, in this story meeting, Joe B. and Mike talked about the idea of a family of monsters that took delight in the macabre. They first appeared in a Snooper and Blabber cartoon called Big Diaper Caper. There was a short, squatty father who looked a bit like Peter Lorre and sounded like him too, as voiced by Doss Butler. There was a tall, thin mother that was a vampire type voiced by Gene Vanderpyle. And then there was Junior, a baby Frankenstein that Don Messick gave this sound to. What? The 3 voice actors I just mentioned were all part of HB's stock company, and, interestingly, all appeared at one time or another on the Flintstones. Of course, Gene Vanderpyle played Wilma.
We're going to have new neighbors next door in Tombstone Manor.
And Don Messick giggled as the strongest baby in the world, Bam Bam. Hanna-Barbera really took to this creepy family idea because they returned a year later in another Snooper and Blabber cartoon called Surprised Party, this time bearing the names Mr. and Mrs. J. Evil Scientist. But the real turning point is a year later when they appeared in a Snooper and Blabber episode entitled Chilly Chiller, where one of the characters calls them gruesome. Well, the 3rd appearance in Snooper and Blabber is apparently no coincidence, as this newly discovered material from the Warner Brothers Hanna-Barbera production library points out. Development material, scripts and storyboards, all for a prospective series of the Gruesomes. And this is 3 years before the Flintstones episode of the same name. Well, here we see a rough storyboard by Mike Maltese. This is the way that Maltese wrote. This board might be redrawn as a production board later. You'll notice that Mike didn't draw the characters on model, but just put them down in his own style.
Well, what wonderful things did we get, Junior? My, looky here. You got a model train wreck with magnets, a Jekyll and Hyde chemistry set, some itty-bitty shrinking fluid from the Amazon with squirt gun, a toy soldier firing squad with blindfolded victim, a do-it-yourself guillotine set, and a hula hoop with spikes. Let's face it, we're a happy family.
This other storyboard was drawn by Alex Lovey. Alex was a longtime Hanna-Barbera resident who was a board artist, producer, and director. Now here you can see Alex's board is drawn very clean and tight, and he uses the character models from the Snooper and Blabber cartoons.
I just love those horror westerns, my dear. Such wonderful violence, and so good for the child, too.
Yes, darling, but why must good always win?
I don't know, my pet. Some silly code the television people have.
In most of these early incarnations, we can see several elements that carry all the way through to the Flintstones episodes, including the man-eating plant and the normal neighbor babysitting the Gruesomes kid.
It's revoltingly nice of you to mind little Goblin for us. We won't be long.
Here are some written materials from Ken Platt. He was a very prolific author and cartoonist who also wrote a long-running newspaper comic strip called Mr. and Mrs. This version was going to be called The Twosomes and the Gruesomes, where the next-door neighbors would be equally important characters. At the end of one of the outlines, he adds a note that he doesn't understand how this concept could possibly work because he feels it's all too horrible and in questionable taste. But then in Joe Barbera's own writing, he gives several ways to make it work. Hanna-Barbera really seemed determined to sell this concept as a series. Now, the next writer to take a shot at it was Harvey Bullock, who was writing on both the Flintstones and Top Cat. His version, which is a half-hour script, also uses the concept of a normal couple who are the leads of the show, bothered by their weird neighbors. See, here Harvey was trying out some cute spellings of Gruesomes, and the names of the characters had changed in his script to Mr. Gruesome, his wife Lucretia, and their son Yerky. Well, around this time, they convinced Western Publishing to print 4 issues of a comic book starring the creepy couple. But since the show never went on the air, they didn't bother to change the name of the comic book to The Gruesomes. They still just used Mr. and Mrs. J. Evil Scientist. Never one to abandon a concept, Hanna-Barbera resurrected the Gruesomes in 2 episodes of The Flintstones. They were basically the same characters, but given Stone Age appearances. Although, for some reason, Mr. Gruesome, who now has a first name of Weirdly, was given huge clown feet and a mop of hair covering his eyes. Howie Morris takes over the Peter Lorre-type voice of the mild-mannered, monster-loving dad.
Hello, Mr. Flintstone. I'm Gruesome.
Yeah, you are, sort of.
You can call me Weirdly.
An extreme makeover was given to Mrs. Gruesome, called Creepella, with a giant nose and hair over her eyes, plus a screechy voice as portrayed by Naomi Lewis.
You may call me Creepy, Cookie.
Creepy?
That's one of those vicey verses.
Their son, with his odd assortment of pets, now spoke and looked like a miniature of his dad rather than the baby Frankenstein clone of Snooper and Blabber days.
Quiet, Schneider, or I'll have to scrunch you.
Now here are some original drawings for backgrounds for the Gruesomes episodes. Notice how they could even make a stone house look creepy by coloring it darker than the others, also giving it broken wood, hanging vines, an overgrown lawn, and interior spider webs. It all gives that lived-in, ghoulish feeling. The second Flintstones episode is the return of 2 families in the Hat Rocks and the Gruesomes. The Hat Rocks first appeared in season 4 in a show titled Bedrock Hillbillies. In an interview with Joe Barbera, I once asked him about adding all the new characters. Well, he explained that when a series runs as long as the Flintstones, you need to do something to freshen it up. In season 3, it was Pebbles. In season 4, Bam Bam. Season 5 introduced Hoppy the Hopperoo, as well as the Gruesomes. But alas, their 2 appearances didn't spawn any more interest than the 4 original Mr. and Mrs. J. Evil Scientist cartoons. But the Monster Family idea didn't die altogether. As part of a later Flintstones 90-minute show, they did a segment called The Frankenstones. In this one, instead of the Peter Lorre dad, it was a gentle Frankenstein father with a Bride of Frankenstein mother. But it seems no amount of development, even years of it, could guarantee a standalone series for the Gruesomes. You'd never know they only appeared in 2 episodes with the modern Stone Age family, since their appearances are so often talked about and so fondly remembered. And now, we have the Gruesomes for all time on this Warner Home Video DVD set of The Flintstones Season 5. Enjoy!